For most of modern aviation history, one airplane defined what long-haul travel looked like. The Boeing 747 wasn't just an aircraft, it was an idea that bigger was better, that moving hundreds of passengers at once was the future. For decades, this idea worked perfectly. Airlines built their networks around massive hub airports. Passengers flowed through a few global gateways, and the 747 sat at the center of that system. So when Boeing announced the 747-8 Intercontinental, it didn't feel like a gamble. It felt like a logical next step. This wasn't a retro revival. It was a technical upgrade. New wings inspired by the 787, new engines, lower noise levels, better fuel efficiency. On paper, it was the most advanced passenger 747 ever built. And yet, something was already changing, quietly, almost invisibly. While Boeing was perfecting the airplane, the world it was designed for was starting to disappear. This is where the story becomes uncomfortable. The Boeing 747-8 Intercontinental was designed, built, and certified in the United States. It was the most advanced passenger version of the 747 ever created. Quieter than previous models, more efficient, capable of flying farther with fewer emissions. And yet, when it entered the market, something strange happened. American Airlines didn't line up to buy it. They didn't negotiate discounts. They didn't order a small test batch. They simply ignored it. American Airlines passed. Delta passed. United passed. Not because they didn't understand the airplane, but because they understood the market. By the time the 747-8i was ready, US Airlines had already committed to a different philosophy. Instead of concentrating passengers into massive hubs, they were spreading traffic across dozens of point-to-point routes. A 747 needed density. It needed consistently high demand. It needed routes where hundreds of seats could be filled every single day. But the modern network didn't guarantee that anymore. Even flagship routes became unstable. Demand fluctuated with seasons, fuel prices, and economic cycles. Flying a giant aircraft meant gambling on demand staying high. Twin-engine wide-bodies reduced that risk. A 787 or an A350 could fly nearly the same distance with fewer passengers. If demand dropped, the loss was manageable. If demand rose, airlines added another frequency. Flexibility replaced size. The 747-8i sat in an awkward position, too large to be flexible, too expensive to fly half full, too specialized for a system that now rewarded adaptability. And there was another factor, rarely discussed openly. The 747 had become a symbol of a previous era, an era of expansion through scale, of prestige measured in aircraft size. But modern airlines were no longer selling prestige. They were selling efficiency. So the paradox became reality. America built an airplane that fit its engineering tradition perfectly, but no longer fit its business model. The 747-8i. It didn't fail certification. It didn't fail safety tests. It didn't fail technologically. It failed to answer the most important question in aviation. Where does this airplane make money? For most American airlines, the answer was simple. It didn't. Despite the shift in the industry, the 747-8 Intercontinental was not completely rejected. A small number of airlines still saw value in an aircraft of this scale, but these airlines shared one important trait. They operated in markets where demand was not just high, it was concentrated. Lufthansa became the largest passenger customer of the 747-8i. For the German carrier, the aircraft made sense. Frankfurt was a true global hub. Slot restrictions limited the number of flights. Adding capacity meant flying larger airplanes, not more of them. In that environment, the 747-8i still had a role. Other operators followed similar logic. Airlines serving dense, intercontinental routes with strong premium demand could justify the aircraft. The 747-8i wasn't used everywhere. It was used very carefully. But even in these cases, the numbers were fragile. Operating margins were thin. Fuel price swings could erase profits overnight. Any disruption, maintenance, weather, or demand shift hit harder with an aircraft this large. And while passenger orders remained limited, another version of the 747-8 found unexpected success. The freighter. Cargo airlines didn't care about passenger trends. They cared about volume, range, and payload. The 747-8F offered something no twin-engine aircraft could match: a massive nose-loading door, unmatched cargo capacity, and the ability to carry oversized freight that simply wouldn't fit anywhere else. For cargo operators, size was still an advantage. Ironically, this kept the 747 program alive far longer than passenger demand ever could. But the Intercontinental version was running out of time. New twin-engine aircraft continued to improve. They became even more efficient, more reliable, more flexible. And slowly, even the airlines that once believed in the 747-8 began to question its future. The airplane still worked, it still performed as designed, but the space for it in commercial aviation was shrinking, year by year. Eventually, the outcome became impossible to ignore. Passenger orders for the 747-8 Intercontinental slowed to a trickle, not because airlines suddenly disliked the aircraft, but because fewer and fewer routes could justify it. The economics were clear. Every new generation of twin-engine wide-body aircraft delivered better fuel efficiency, lower maintenance costs, and more operational flexibility. At the same time, airport infrastructure continued to evolve. Airlines optimized schedules. They increased frequencies instead of aircraft size. They reduced risk by spreading capacity across multiple flights. The role the 747 was built for kept shrinking. Boeing faced a quiet reality. The 747-8 was not a failure of engineering. It was a mismatch between design philosophy and market demand. In January 2023, the final Boeing 747 rolled off the production line, not with headlines of celebration, but with a sense of closure. The aircraft that once redefined global travel had reached the natural end of its journey. And yet, the story of the 747-8 matters. It shows how aviation doesn't reward nostalgia. It rewards efficiency, timing, adaptation. The 747-8 arrived too late for the world that needed it, and too early to be remembered as a mistake. It stands as a reminder that even the most advanced airplanes can become irrelevant when the system around them changes. The Boeing 747 didn't disappear because it was bad. It disappeared because aviation moved on.